So I got a request, what would I do with Anthony Joshua? What fights, if I was managing, promoting him, if I was Eddie Hearn, what would I do with him from here? Now, essentially, in terms of building a heavyweight who you want to be the heavyweight champion of the world, I think you want to give them a variety of experiences. You want to make them a well-rounded heavyweight who has experience of coping with a variety of different issues in the ring, so that when they're ready to step up to the elite level, there's not going to be a shock or a surprise for them, if you like. So let's talk about some of the challenges that an elite level heavyweight could pose Anthony Joshua that he hasn't faced just yet. I mean, I would suggest first and foremost, Anthony Joshua has never faced anyone his own size. I mean, he's faced guys like Matt Skelton, who are, Skelton's a big guy, but he hasn't faced anyone who, really brings a sort of height and reach dynamic to rival Joshua's own attributes in that area. So I'd consider that. He hasn't fought anyone with power. He hasn't fought anyone with an elite level inside game. He hasn't fought anyone with an elite level jab. He hasn't fought anyone with an elite level defence. He hasn't fought anyone with elite level movement. Now, what I would try and do is start giving him gentle exposure to one of these different attributes at a time. Maybe put him in with a good mover. Then maybe put him in with a guy who likes to fight on the inside. Then maybe put him in with a taller guy. So that when he gets up to fighting the Tyson Furies, the Vladimir Klitschko's, the David Hayes, the Alexander Povetkins of this world, it's not a surprise to him. Well, you look at Chris Eubank Jr. against Billy Joe Saunders. He effectively fought nothing at the start of his career, and his first real fight, he was chucked right in against Billy Joe. And I think he lost the first 5 rounds because he was so unused to dealing with someone with that movement, with that defensive elusiveness, with that jab. Perhaps if he'd had harder fights on the way up that gave him exposure to these different attributes, by the time it came to fight Billy Joe, he'd have been more prepared. It wouldn't have taken him so long to become accustomed to the different pace. Perhaps he could have put his foot on the gas earlier. Perhaps he may have even won the fight. I think it's that important. So in terms of naming names, who would I like to see Anthony Joshua fight? I think he's now 10-0 or 11-0. And in my opinion, he's fought nobody who prepares him for that next level. That sort of second tier of heavyweight division. So let's start naming people. I think first things first, credit to Eddie Hearn on this front. His next opponent, assuming that fight happens, and I really hope it does, is Kevin Johnson, who I view as a really, really good fight for Anthony Joshua. Johnson, he isn't the most offensively gifted. He's not the most thrilling fighter in terms of entertainment, but he's got superb fundamentals. An underrated jab, excellent body positioning, and an elite level defence. What Joshua needs is someone who's going to give him rounds. Someone who is going to drag him, to round 6, round 7, round 8. Someone who's going to give him experience of going late in a fight. Someone who's going to test his stamina. And I think Kevin Johnson will do that. The way Johnson sort of twists, turns in the ring, the way he positions himself, the way he's able to ride shots, it's going to be a very good experience for Anthony Joshua to be in with a guy like that. He was claiming last night that Jason Gaverne was awkward, that Jason Gaverne was slippery. Well, you're going to find out what a slippery, awkward opponent is when you fight Kevin Johnson. And I think Kevin Johnson can give him a few problems. I don't think Kevin Johnson's got the desire and the offensive capabilities these days to actually beat Anthony Joshua. But that's a really good learning fight. And when Joshua steps up to the elite levels, he can say that he's been a few rounds. He can say that he's faced someone who genuinely is awkward. You can say that you face someone with a jab, someone with a chin, And I think those are good capabilities for him to understand and have experience of. You get problems with fighters like David Price, who are so used to knocking out opponents that when they step up to someone who can maybe live with their power slightly, it's a bit of a shock. Their stamina hasn't been tested. And a fight like Kevin Johnson can bridge that gap. So I think Eddie Hearn's doing exactly the right thing in Kevin Johnson. I think there's scope, given the lack of rounds Joshua's had in his pro career to date, to throw in one similar opponent to that. I'm talking a Fraser Quendo, I'm talking a Sermon Williams, one of the type of guys who doesn't get stopped, who's going to give him rounds, who's going to test his stamina, who's going to give him experience of an opponent who just doesn't fall over the second Joshua tags them. I think the Kevin Johnson fight is a superb matchup for Joshua at this stage, and I would maybe say one more of those guys, as I say, Fraser Quendo, Sermon Williams, is a good matchup. Maybe Fraser Quendo, he's probably the better of the two. He's a taller guy, he's got a lot of experience, a lot of ring savvy. He tends to go late in fights, doesn't just fall over. And I think that's a really, really good fight for Anthony Joshua. If he could fight Kevin Johnson, fight Fraser Quendo, you're starting to build that basis. He's answering questions by beating these guys. He's proven that he can go a few rounds. He's proving his stamina. He's getting experience of dealing with slippery, experienced opponents. So I like both of those two. Now, moving on from those sort of tests, where would I go from him at that point? Well, I think fighting someone with height who's got a jab is key. Alexander Ustinov would be a good opponent. Yeah, he's a very beatable guy. Look at what Kubrat Pulev did with him. If Joshua's got any ambitions to be towards the top of the heavyweight division, he's got to beat Ustinov. Ustinov is so limited in his movement. He's so limited in his how dynamic he is. You'd have to favour Joshua in that fight. But it's going to be experience of going up against someone really, really big. Joshua's own size, maybe even bigger than Joshua. And I think to get to the top level of the heavyweight division, beating Michael Sprott, beating Jason Gaverne, it's just not preparing you whatsoever for the beasts at the top, the Furies, the Klitschko's, who are 6'7", maybe even got bigger reach than Joshua. So I think that's a really, really good fight, and I really like that. So I'd go Kevin Johnson, Fraser Quendo, Alexander Ustinov. Then I'd start to look to build additional skills. I'd probably look at Malik Scott. I know Malik Scott gets a lot of criticism because of the way he performed against Deontay Wilder, Derek Chisora to a lesser extent. But he's just come back, he's just fought and beat Alex Leopardi and really beat him up quite badly. Malik Scott, technician, he's got exceptional movement, he's got a good jab, he's another elusive type character. You'll notice all these opponents I'm picking, Fraser Quendo, Malik Scott, Alexander Ustinov, they're teaching him different things, but none of them are sort of at the start of their careers. None of them are guys full of desire. None of them are Dillian Whites or Joseph Parkers, young, hungry, with power. These are guys who maybe don't hit quite as hard. These are guys in the autumns of their career. These are guys interested in collecting a payday. They're not going to beat Joshua, but at the same time, they're going to be adding strings to his bow, giving him good experience. So as I said, I'd go Johnson, Quendo, Ustinov. Then I'd maybe throw in Malik Scott to give him experience of that movement. So now you look at Joshua 15-0 or 14-0, I forget what it is. He's faced someone with height, he's faced someone with movement, he's faced someone with an elite level chin, he's faced someone with elite level defence, he's faced, a guy who's fought Klitschko, a guy who's fought Chigayev, a guy who's fought Pulev. He's starting to face guys who are going to put him in that heavyweight top 15 in most people's minds. So where would I go from there? What would be the next logical step? I think the best option is Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora, I view him as a kind of gatekeeper type figure. He loses every time he steps up. He doesn't beat elite level fighters. David Haye, a tight fight with Hellenius, Tyson Fury twice, Klitschko. He doesn't beat these guys. And I think it's another test that Anthony Joshua will need to come through if he is going to get to the top of the heavyweight division. But why do I like this fight? The reason I like it is because Derek Chisora, whilst he is limited, offers something completely different. He's going to come in low. He's going to come in, throwing body punches. He's going to try and close down the gap against Joshua. He's going to try and rough Joshua up on the inside. It's a completely different opponent to Malik Scott, to Kevin Johnson, to Fraser Quendo, to Alexander Ustinov. He's posing a different threat. He's throwing wide, overhand rights. He's awkward in that sense. And he's really going to test Joshua out on the inside. So I like that fight. Another guy, Chisora, who isn't a massive puncher, who has got quite a few miles on the clock at this stage of his career. It's another fight you'd be confident of Anthony Joshua winning. An equivalent, although I prefer Chisora even, you could also look at a guy like Christian Hamer. You know, very sort of, yeah, he's not as good as Chisora in my book, but highly rated, similar type of fighter. I'd prefer Chisora, but if you couldn't get Chisora, then maybe a name like Hamer, maybe even a name like Rudenko. So you're at this point, you've just beaten Chisora, you've now got experience of beating an inside fighter who punches to the body, you've got experience of beating a tall jabber in Ustinov, you've got experience beating a mover in Malik Scott, you've got experience beating durable guys with experience and chin and defence in Oquendo and Kevin Johnson. Where do you go next? Well, at this point, I'll probably look for Lucas Brown. The reason being, I'd pick Joshua over Lucas Brown. I think Lucas Brown is too stationary, too heavy, not athletic enough, not a good enough mover to beat Anthony Joshua. But what Lucas Brown does do is bring power and strength to the equation. And I think beating Lucas Brown at this stage is still enough now to propel Joshua, who's just beaten Chisora, to a top 10 heavyweight. So I think that's probably the route I'd go. I think those are the fights I'd take Joshua on if I was promoting him. I think he'd win all of them, and I think that would give him a real variety of exposure, so that when he steps up to the very, very top level of the sport, he's got experiences already in hand, and he's not going to be found not knowing what to do. You know, he'll have experience of inside, outside fighters, experience of body punches, experience of jabbers, experience of movers, experience of elite defensive fighters who fight with angles, experience of guys who don't just go down the second he taps them. I think that would be a really, really good sort of programme of fights for Anthony Joshua. And I think if he fought those opponents and beat them and experienced a few rounds with them in the manner I expected him to, by the time he got to the top of the heavyweight division, he'd be well-rounded enough and well-experienced enough to be more of a threat than he is at present. That's my programme, that's how I would take him if I was managing him. Let me know your thoughts. Who would you put him in against? Thanks for watching.